nothing to say whatsoever, but just thought about checking out if anything comes when the recording button is pressed. I live in a similar, not in a similar place, but I mean there's another place like this, which is actually in a way more exotic looking. It's right next to my apartment. It's pretty cool. It has some old Victorian type buildings and greenhouses and very exotic, numerous different plants, and one can just go in the area to sit. Rarely I do go there though, because it's an enclosed area and you cannot walk through there anywhere, so you would have to kind of specifically go there. I mean, it's not a big trouble or anything, it's right next door, but I don't know. Usually I go to these kinds of places which are along the way somewhere else. But yeah, that particular place is like enclosed. So yeah, I'm still just testing if anything will come or appear. Nothing. Well, there's nothing nothing going on in the environment, nothing specific. But when I was walking here, I didn't take a straight route. But anyway, when I was walking today, there was a lot of noise everywhere. There was one concert in the distance, but at first one could hear only the bass, which was really impressive actually. The music, when I got closer, it was revealed that it was just crap. It was somehow, I don't know what the music style is, maybe aerobic, kind of like aerobic humping music, I don't know, jumping humping music, I don't know, folk disco, something horrible like that. But it was like really freaking loud, especially the bass. And when the bass was on, it felt like it was filling the whole world. It was so loud. It resonated in the body, of course, and it sounded like it was like all over, everywhere. You couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from until you got closer to the concert place. And then there were like it was at first it was neutral, like there was a lot of sound and noise, but there was no sense of it being a threat, so there was no mental image that would have caused fear. which in some situations the fear is appropriate, because of course the body wants to stay safe, and it's natural for it to, for the body to seek comfort and safety. There's nothing wrong with that. But at first it was like neutral, but then when I got closer, I noticed, and this is all conventional language, this is a mental image of a past, and every time the words say I did this, or something happened to me, or I thought, etc., that doesn't actually imply that there's a separate I entity to which events and things happen, but that cannot really be used as a means to escape from difficult emotions or traumas, or a sense of distress, or it's not effective. It's not really, like, if that kind of stuff is used to become numb, that's this is not what it's about anyways. Like, this is not a topic, this is how things actually are. So anyway, when I got closer to the source of the sound, I started to hear what kind of music it was, and it was shit, basically. And then there was like a subtle judgment in the form of that thought, like, oh my god, people are fucking insane, why do they listen to this kind of shit and so loud? And so that thought, and then there was the accompanying feeling uh, that was about to rise, but that was kind of noticed that, okay, so this is a personal preference, and it's not absolutely true. This is just still just neutral noise or neutral sound vibration. And then it was just released, and it was like, all right, well, nah, whatever, doesn't matter. Not my business, what can I do? But there could have been the extra suffering. Sorry, I have to cough. Like the second arrow that Buddha talked about, for example. Sorry about the voice. I've been sleeping from my, well, not my diet, but from the healthier diet. I've been eating more ice cream and sugar and wheat, and that definitely affects the health. I usually notice it pretty quickly, and it's noticeable in the voice also. But I got back again to the healthier diet. I don't know if I will talk about it later, not in this video, but in some other. So Buddha talked about the second arrow, which is like there's a primary physical suffering, maybe, or physical pain, or challenging circumstances, and that cannot be prevented, and that in itself is actually neutral. But then there's the personal opinions and personal suffering on top, usually, not always, but for most people, for like apparently for most people, the opinions and beliefs about things having to be different, and or thoughts about how things could be different but aren't and should be different in this moment, and all the reactivity that is based on the personal views. That's the second arrow. So it's like, instead of being shot by one arrow, one is shot by two arrows. But if you're interested, you can find the talk or the sermon online. Just write Buddha and second arrow, and you'll get the point. So yeah, if there's a dangerous situation, or a seemingly dangerous situation that is not based on merely like a personal delusion, like there's a lot of insanity in the world, like, well, you all know, all kinds of stuff. And if somebody, comes to threaten you, it's only natural to act. And the acting has to do with maintaining peace, primary for oneself, but through that, the peace is also, benefiting the environment and other apparent people, and it sows different kinds of seeds. If the primary aim in life is always towards harmony and peace and sanity, that in a way apparently that kind of sows karmic seeds that grow harmony and peace. And part of the growing process, the apparent growing process, can look like moving to another place that is more safe, that doesn't trigger stress or fear all the time. Like, there have been warnings about getting stuck, like in Buddhism, for example, there have been warnings about getting stuck in a particular situation for a long time, and that can cause the mind, so-called mind, to kind of decline. So there will be pathways in the brain, like the brain is plastic, so it can learn new behaviors, and the behaviors can either reinforce stressful feelings and views and beliefs, or it can have to do with the release of the stress and stressful beliefs and images and accompanying feelings. So it is emphasized in Buddhism and probably in other philosophies or mind sciences also, that if there is an apparent choice, that apparent choice can happen, and the sane choice would be the somehow noticing what's going on, like, oh no, this is feeding the fear and stress, and it's possible to stop. But of course, outside circumstances cannot be changed, but the body can move away from them to somewhere more harmonious that nurtures peace of mind. But this is all on the level of karma, cause and apparent cause and effect. And the awareness that is hearing these words is never actually affected, or it's aware but not touched by anything that appears or seems to appear. And yeah, sometimes, like, or maybe usually, or maybe even always, I'm not totally sure, it might be even always, it's a mental image in the end, some kind of a mental comprehension having to do with the threat feeling in various degrees. And the threat can look and feel really freaking intense. It's been somehow linked, that mental image of I'm threatened, it's been linked through the senses to apparent outside circumstances. And yeah, if there's something acute going on, then there can be sane action, which is, and fear in those situations, like when there's impending violence or a threat to life or something, then apparent actions, sane actions can appear. Look at this little bird. Cute. I don't usually talk like this, but anyway. Did this little buddy come to listen? I don't know. Listen to the voice or something. That's a rare bird. Rare bird. I don't know what species. I don't usually see those kinds of. But yeah, for me, for example, well, I've been stuck in in an aggravating situation for a long time, and it had to do with PTSD. First of all, there was PTSD. um, I was grabbed by the throat at my previous home, or outside of my previous home, where I was woken up in the middle of the night to yells, and somebody was yelling for help, and I went to interfere to a manslaughter. There was a lot of blood in the scene, and satanic symbolism. Like, there was a door open. I went to the door, and there was like a goat head, image of a goat head, like a satanic symbol on the wall. And I confronted the man who had attacked another woman who was just sitting against the wall, all bloody. And then that man grabbed me by the throat, and I got away from there and called the police. And from that moment onwards, the PTSD, like a couple of months later, maybe, the PTSD started, and it lasted for maybe 11 years. And a lot of other stuff happened also, like close family members, many died in the same short time frame. I had a really traumatic mushroom trip, like psychotic mushroom trip, although there were not many delusions, but the feeling was just like everything died, and it was a shock, like the whole world died. It was kind of like the same stuff that I usually talk in these videos, like when the sense of separation ends, and it can end suddenly. It ended for me, so to speak, with the psychedelics. Bee going up my freaking pants. Okay, please. What's up with this? I'm talking about fear and anxiety, and the bee came. Okay. Just don't go in there, please. Why there? Why? I have clean socks. What the hell? And yeah, so the next apartment was not quiet at all. And almost every night it was very difficult to sleep. I basically woke up every night to the noises the neighbors made, like thumps and stuff like that, or the door closing sounds. And there was the PTSD reactivity on for 11 years or something, and it's a freaking surprise that I didn't kill myself, basically, or became insane or attacked. I mean, I could just as well be in prison right now because it was really close that I didn't attack some of the neighbors at some times. I don't know what the point of this was. Maybe to just empathize and to show that, yeah, I know what suffering is, for sure. It's hellish, especially when there's like a really intense sense of hatred. That's already a kind of a hell. And yeah, I can see the warnings are valid in Buddhism, and the talk about hell also, that's kind of valid in some sense. And yeah, this head or this brain has the view kind of that this is not the only life, this bodily physical existence, and the main state that the brain is in, so to speak, kind of maybe determines what the next dream life is going to be like. And it can be like a very long hellish experience, depending on if there is a lot of conditioning that is based on or causing fear and anxiety and hatred, especially, like almost like continuously anger and hatred and stuff like that. And hatred itself is based on a delusion, but anger as such is a natural reaction, and it can be very understandable in some situations. And also sadness or even sorrow is also natural. When a loved one dies, for example, of course there's sorrow then, and so on, but there's not grasping at any ideas of this should not be, I should not be angry, I should not feel sorrow, or I should not be sad, etc. When that is not happening, then those feelings just move through, and there's the awakeness present, or something like ease and peace, some like more fundamental ease and peace that doesn't prevent stressful situations necessarily, like challenging feelings even. Like I said, like anger can appear, but there's peace behind the anger. This and the peace has to do with non-grasping or non-pushing away, like emotionally, psychologically. And there's nothing like, for example, when there are mental images that seem to trigger deep, like really stressful feeling, anxiety, for example, that can be noticed that the anxiety was caused, actually, it was triggered by the mental activity that was referring to me as this body. But it might be too late, like the anxiety might be already present and the images, the imagination has already triggered it. But at that point, there can be, I'm talking from my own experience, so to speak. At that point, when there's no grasping and no pushing away, and the pushing away can look like I'm awareness and I'm aware of this sense of anxiety, and I am aware of this sense of anxiety because I want to get rid of it. So there's a hidden hope of, okay, if I'm neutral enough and just let this be enough, like neutrally and still enough, then this will go away. But that doesn't seem to work. There's At that point there's not really any methods that ultimately work. There are plasters that do work, like therapeutic tactics to deal with these certain emotions or sense of anxiety, or breathing techniques. But ultimately, what releases them is that ending of that dual setup of awareness here and that feeling over there, or that this feeling here and I'm aware of this feeling. But that's false. That's false duality. And the non-grasping can look like, the letting go can look like, okay, what if there is only this fear, this sense of fear? What if I am this fear? What if I am this anxiety, for example? What if there is only this feeling that I don't want, that I have been waiting to get rid of or waiting to go away? What if I am this feeling? And then there's just like a collapsing of that tension between the awareness and the feeling. There's no more the awareness and the feeling. There's just the feeling. And the awareness and the feeling, in a way, they are the same. And at that point, it's not a point, but anyway, at that point, the feeling itself also just vanishes because it was never there. It was never real. It seemed to be real when there was the apparent distance and the apparent future of the threat. to me. So there was like a tension in between. Future is also tension. Present moment and future, that's fear, and that's tension. And when that just somehow mentally, energetically drops or ends, then the feeling also ends. It releases and it shows itself as it really is, which is everything. And what is everything? Everything is energy. What is energy? Or apparent energy, let's say. And what is that? It's nothing. Uh, but it's not nothing as the mind understands nothing. It's nothing that can be pointed out. It's nothing that can be pointed out what it is. It can't be comprehended by the brain, by the mind, but it's felt. It's the life itself in a way. Livingness, beingness, life, without borders, without conditions, unconditional life. But yeah, my sympathies for anyone dealing with intense situations and intense feelings of whatever, dread, doom. But these things play out by themselves in a way. It's all empty. There are no real doers. There are no real separate doers. Even though it seems like there are many different people running around and choosing to do insane things. Or it might seem that I choose my thoughts, but that's just another automatic empty thought that nobody has produced. It's a spontaneous appearance. So in that sense, nothing is well, nothing is wrong, nothing is right, but actually nothing is really even happening, not as some separate happening, and not as a happening that is happening to me, some separate experiencer, some separate subject here experiencing objective events and things through the senses as a body. That's illusory, that's not true. But it's apparent. It's apparent. So it's not totally like nothing exists. It's not totally like nothing is happening. Like anything is appearing to happen. Right now, talking is appearing to happen. Light appears to be on a screen, forming a picture of a park or arboretum, or how do you say that? Etc. etc.